biggest questions that a lot of Gaylor theorists face is, if Taylor is a member of the LGBTQ community, then why has she not come out of the closet? And the simple answer is that most of us believe that she's had at least one attempt to come out of the closet that was thwarted by the Masters heist. But realistically, any other artist would probably be considered out of the closet if they'd done all of the things that Taylor has. And furthermore, a good number of us believe that it's likely she also intended to come out after 1989 and had that attempt thwarted by the chaos of the Reputation era. But we will get into both of those failed coming outs a bit later and analyze them, looking not only at her lyrics and her visuals, but also her social media presence, the live performances she was doing, the story she was telling with her pap walks, etc. But the largest pop star in the world is a member of our community. That is huge. These songs will be analyzed and discussed for decades, if not centuries to come. It's important that the muse of many of these songs is likely a woman or women. And not only is it important for us to recognize Taylor as queer, both for her own benefit and for the benefit of our community, but when we have an artist who is using queer themes, symbols, metaphors, imagery, flagging, and more, and we don't recognize those symbols as queer, we dilute the undercurrent of queer subtext in the mainstream media. The attempts to keep people from speculating about queerness with regards to Taylor's art ultimately come from a place of not only wanting to weaken queer influence and meaning in art, but also from a place of wanting to make it more difficult for Taylor herself to come out and be openly herself. But we're going to discuss that and both of the suspected failed coming outs in greater detail throughout this video, because it's larger than Taylor and it's important that we become better at not only recognizing signs and symbols of queerness, but also recognizing the tightrope that many queer artists in Hollywood are walking. But more so than that, understand that queer people have always and will always make a considerable percentage of our media. And I just want to say, this is probably just the first version of this video that I'll make. I can't be as thorough as I'd like to be because this script is already getting quite long and no one's going to sit through this. But anyway, first I want to address a couple things, especially for people who are newer here, to give some much needed context. Discussions like this involve a lot of nuance, and without the context surrounding events, it's easy to misinterpret them or to dismiss them as idle misunderstanding. Whenever the subject of Taylor and queerness comes up, there are a lot of assertions that come from places that ignore the storied history of A-list celebrities remaining in the closet for the benefit of their career. If you want to just see the stories of the failed coming out and you know the groundwork about speculation, queer flagging, and how coming out is something done for the benefits of straight people, not their queer peers, you can go on to the timestamp below. But if not, and honestly, I implore you to sit through this even if you are already familiar with it, because it's good to be reminded from time to time. Putting speculation into context. It is not offensive to speculate that someone is queer, and if you believe that it is, you really need to go back and disassemble the queerphobia in your mindsets. I promise you, Taylor is more okay with her fans speculating about her queerness than she is about her fans attacking one another for speculating anything about her life. If she was in the closet and desperate to stay there, she would not openly signal queerness many times over the course of recent years. I argue that it is significantly worse to look at an artist who seems to be constantly signaling and honestly screaming that they're a member of our community and to deny them that, than it is to say someone is queer when they're not, particularly if that person is an ally. Especially because, whilst the mainstream narrative of TTBD is largely that the reason for the intense themes of depression and being on the brink of doing something you cannot come back from came from her breakup with Joe Alwyn, many Gaylors believe that it's because Taylor had a plan to come out at New York Pride 2019, which would have ultimately let her openly be with whoever she wanted to be with and no longer have to hide in the closet, but that plan was thwarted when Scooter Braun purchased her masters. And especially when you look at all of the marching band imagery from the release of the song Me, and you compare it to the marching band imagery from TTBD, it's the same imagery, just now devoid of color and twisted from celebration to mourning. As someone who spent most of their life in the closet to some degree, I can attest that it's painful, it's draining. You have to constantly be mindful of what you say, how you say it, who you're seen with, and where. You have to invent a straight persona, then method act as that character. You cannot have the person or persons you truly care with for you in your most critical moments. And all of the parade imagery is very likely meant to reference the Pride parade that most of us believe she was intended to come out at. The truth of the matter is, when Taylor does come out, it's going to have a significant impact on her career. Rules have always been applied differently to Taylor than they have been to other artists, even other pop artists. The stakes for coming out differ from artist to artist, and historically, more country-leading artists, or artists who started in country and have a large audience from that time period, have really suffered from coming out. Taylor's friend and collaborator Shelley Wright had an intensely difficult time coming out as a country artist, which is something Taylor likely saw firsthand. Taylor is not going to do an interview or something where she explicitly says that she's queer until she has achieved everything that she wants to achieve with her career. She should not need to come out to straight people's standards and suffer that violence just to be acknowledged and recognized as one of us. It's fairly common for artists who are in the closet to take baby steps out of the closet to see what the overall fan response is to their queerness. It can be very hard to predict sometimes which celebrities fans would respond positively to them coming out versus which would respond negatively. Especially as the world again becomes increasingly dangerous for queer folks, celebrities always need to keep public impression of their queerness in mind when they're hosting concerts and other large gatherings. Especially for a celebrity who has a lot of stalkers, coming out of the closet could result in an act of violence. You very often see a pattern with Taylor where she leans into her relationships more when she is on tour, especially when there's a plausible reason to think that risk is high. During Eras tour, Taylor skyrocketed to a level of fame that even she had never before possessed, but we also had a credible threat unlike any she's ever before had, too. She has established herself as a childish Catwoman in an era when that is politicized. Even that comparatively marginal thing has provoked violence. Her queerness will not go over without added threats, and it would be one thing if she herself alone suffered those consequences, but concert tours, attending football games, tens if not hundreds of thousands of innocent people's lives could become collateral damage. When you have a celebrity who is too big to be hurt, people hurt them where they can be hurt, where they're most vulnerable, with their audience. And also, with so many people that have really worked against her to try and stop her from meeting the goals in her life, and as someone who I myself stayed in the closet for 38 years because I did not want my queerness to be held against me professionally, it absolutely makes sense that Taylor would want to try and exist in a state where she is out to the people around her and the fans whose opinion she cares about most, but not so out that Fox News can make hundreds of thousands of dollars marketing her as this satanic great deceiver lesbian figure, and in doing so incite their followers to cause harm. I think back to the beginning of Eras tour when she was framed as this Pentagon psyop by Fox News. The energy that both the media and fans have for Taylor is uniquely intense. Because of the scale of Taylor's influence and the fact that a good number of conservative women and children like her music too, she is a particularly large target for the Fox News/alt-right influencer set. It has typically been easy for them to convince their followers to cast aside so much other left-leaning media, but Taylor has her hooks in so many people, especially women and girls, in a way that even fear of damnation can't overcome. When Taylor comes out, they're absolutely going to spin this into a, if Taylor hid it for so long, then all women are liars. Whilst Taylor may be too big for them to hurt with their stories, the community she's a part of is not. But also, when Taylor initially announced her intent to re-record her first 6 albums, the industry perspective on that was kind of scornful. Many of us have forgotten this because the effort was so successful, but so many people doubted Taylor when she first proposed this. Because it's not just a matter of finding a way to convince your audience to repurchase all those albums again, it's also a matter of convincing the label that this is a worthwhile use of Taylor's time. Spending all of this time on new material would likely have been more financially beneficial than re-recording old material. It's not just that it would have been nearly financially impossible for her to do the re-recordings or repurchase her masters if she would have come out in 2019. It's the fact that contracts with recording labels still very frequently have morality clauses, which often prevent an artist from doing something to damage their image, and coming out as queer usually is considered a part of that. On coming out and queer flagging. There have always been a significant number of closeted individuals in Hollywood. Queer people have always and will always make your media, even if they cannot do it openly. There has always been an incredible cost, both financially and in the degree a person's career can succeed, associated with coming out. Some artists do manage to succeed despite that, but I promise you, nearly all of them would have had more financially successful careers, more opportunities, and more recognition if they would have stayed in the closet. When Ellen was on Rosie O'Donnell back in the 90s, she joked about all of the lesbians in Hollywood. I guarantee you, at least one of your grandma's 3 favorite old Hollywood actors and actresses was likely some flavor of queer. When queer celebs are interviewed on that Gaydar TikTok interview series and they're asked to name 5 gay people, a number of them have panicked over not wanting to accidentally out somebody who isn't out yet. Basically, every person in Hollywood who comes out of the closet says their management or their label or some other power that be either heavily pressured them to stay in the closet, if not forcing them to do so outright. The Hollywood glass closet is not new. Also, typically, when we think of coming out of the closet, we usually mean coming out to the straight people in our lives. By the time a queer person comes out to their family or comes out at work, they very often have participated in queer community with their friends. They have put on whatever outfit affirms their identity, gone to the club or the bookstore or the drag show or whatever it is, and they have been out among their community. And while they're doing that, they are queer flagging. Queer flagging is something that is done deliberately for the purposes of communicating your identity to others you're in community with, while at the same time doing so in a way that protects you from the violence of homophobic people and press. Queer flagging is an important way that we signal our identity to our community so that we are recognized by our community. And I do feel like a lot of younger queer folks have lost the plot when it comes to queer flagging because for many of their lives, they have not had to fear being more open about their identity. If you're in your 20s and you've lived in a major city for most of your life, you probably have always been safe just running around wearing a shirt that says lesbian on it unless your family themselves was homophobic. But when people like Taylor and myself were children, we got to see Ellen come out of the closet and not only have her career sidelined for years, but also the actress who played her love interest in the sitcom for 1 episode couldn't work for over a year either. And this is Laura Dern, fresh off of Jurassic Park's success. Ellen got a few good interviews where her being a lesbian was celebrated, but before long there was intense backlash. Her show was canceled. She also had to completely change her image. She was a bit more crass and raunchy at the beginning of her career, but she had to reinvent herself as the family-friendly lesbian to avoid being labeled a pervert. Ellen also had to invent this "I'm so nice" persona when it is clear from recent reports that that is not her. This persona was very likely invented to protect her from the label of the mean girl lesbian. While her career did eventually recover, we will never know what her career potential could have been if she would not have come out. But I do know that Taylor very likely had the same formative experience that kept me in the closet for so long, standing in the checkout line at the grocery store and seeing that every single tabloid spoke about Ellen DeGenerate and how awful it was that she was on TV influencing young minds. One of Taylor's early collaborators, Shelley Wright, came out of the closet early in Taylor's career and suffered immensely for it. So Taylor has seen someone who she wrote very queer-coded music with have their audience and the industry turn their back on her because of her queerness. Taylor has consistently had it communicated to her that if she comes out of the closet, she will not achieve the career goals that she has set for herself. And I think all of us can agree that Taylor's career is the #1 priority in her life. But it's difficult and it's painful to be a part of the community and live completely detached from it. So most of us, even people like Taylor and myself who spent decades in the closet for the benefit of our careers, still want to engage with the community. We still want to engage with queerness in our art. If we invent context like Taylor Swift's work where we refuse to see the queer flags, that doesn't just hurt Taylor in her own quest to come out of the closet. That also dilutes those flags. And it also dilutes the impact that a queer artist can have with the queer community because it prevents us from interpreting their music in the context that they likely intended for it to be interpreted. Very frequently when artists are queer flagging, there's the perception that they're doing it accidentally, but Taylor has been doing it extremely consistently for the large majority of her career. Because of the way queer flagging often subverts things like gender and current fashion, it's very difficult for somebody to do accidentally and to come off as doing it correctly. And Taylor is friends with the large majority of the prominent sapphic women in the industry. If Taylor was consistently queer flagging and didn't know, her friends would let her know, or they wouldn't be friends with her. And it's important for us to recognize the artists who are queer flagging because that's an incredibly important way that queer subtext is recognized. Queer flagging by mainstream artists is one of the most prominent ways that the subcurrent of queer subtext is allowed to continue to flourish even underneath the main current of mainstream text in the media. Closeted artists may also stay closeted so that their art can be consumed by the people who need to hear it most, but who cannot safely listen to out queer artists, given their family or religious structure. It's also a matter of the existing as a bridge to allow questioning fans to explore their own beliefs before moving on to more explicitly queer artists. And Taylor especially has helped facilitate this by having almost exclusively queer or queer-flagging artists open for her at the Eras Tour. And when you're talking about queer celebrities, an additional level of difficulty in coming out is the fact that people like to believe they know who they're supporting. And the more conservative or churchy your audience is, the more difficult it becomes. And whilst we do have this general association of Taylor with liberalism, there are a lot of her fans that are homophobic, and that is why anyone who even dares to breathe a word that Taylor might not be straight is framed as being this awful person who is doing something dirty and gross. You can't just easily go from being the perfect church girl next door Christian singer to being out as LGBTQ. If your fans suspected something or believe something and then they have that belief confirmed, it goes over a lot better than if the information is a surprise and they feel like they've been lied to all along. Because of that, with most celebrities, especially large celebrities who come out nowadays, there is very often a period of slowly pushing the needle to move that window of what fans expect to include queerness. But you have to run a kind of tricky balance of not pushing it too far too fast, because very often that causes backlash. And that causes situations like what we were seeing with Billie Eilish, where there is an outrage and loss of supporters, and it leaves the artist walking a weird line of being accused of queerbaiting. But I've gone into these subjects and many more in several other videos, so I'll not beleaguer the point any further here. On to failed coming out number 2. First off, I just want to give a lot of credit to Sophie TV on Tumblr for collecting a lot of the evidence and putting together a rough timeline of the failed lover coming out. It made things a lot easier for me. Like I stressed at the top, one thing I want to stress is that if basically any other artist would have done what Taylor did throughout the Lover era, we would consider them out of the closet. This whole era featured her using pride flag colors, lesbian flag colors, bi flag colors, and some people choose to see the use of both bi and lesbian as if it's some sort of gotcha that proves that those can't be Taylor's personal flags. But whilst some people's identities are fixed, some people also have fluidity to our identity and switch. Both of those are valid. It's also very common for PR firms to advise celebs who are gay or lesbians to come out as bi for a while to prevent it from hurting their career as much. Either of those scenarios would represent a plausible cause for Taylor flagging both. So as I just established, celebs who are perceived to be straight who are trying to come out of the closet need to slowly push the bar of what people expect from them until they get to such a point where people are starting to realize on their own that they're queer. You can really see this most obviously in how Sabrina Carpenter has been acting recently, experimenting with women's roles in cis heteronormative relationships, while also showing herself look happier with women than she does with men, while also wearing a lot of more masculine outfits. Sabrina flew under the radar because she has presented herself as hyperfemme, but presenting yourself as hyperfemme is very common within sapphics. Starting with the photo shoots that Taylor did in early 2019, you see a greater incorporation of queer styling. She has a kind of shaggy haircut that's oh so common amongst queer people. She's doing more photo shoots in blazers, in denim, in rainbows, or in colors from the bi or lesbian flags. She's pairing pink dresses with combat boots, experimenting with hyperfemme stylings, wearing rainbow rings. She's added a dip dye of pastels to her hair, and there's the stereotype that bright colored hair is a leftist queer thing. We also have the yellow dress motif beginning to establish. Yellow is a color associated with closeting that we'll discuss in more detail later when we get into You Need to Calm Down. I think it's very interesting, and this Elle photo shoot has a lot of mirrors and reflections, and they're kind of shattered or broken apart or small pieces. We see this imagery a lot in Taylor's work. This concept that there are imperfect reflections of her, this concept of shattering the image other people have of her. We also have a prominent yellow dress, one of the first to be labeled a closeting dress, but she'd bring back several others over the years, including the one that broke so many hearts at Eras Tour. There's also the matter of blind items and gossip. Blind items are tidbits of gossip that are presented in a way that is designed to conceal who the gossip are about. While not every blind item is true, a good number of them do eventually get revealed to be true. Like, there have been blind items about Diddy for years. And there were blind items and other gossips starting at the beginning of 2019 that began to assert that Taylor was about to come out of the closet, but also, she's had blind items about being queer for nearly her entire career. On March 6, 2019, she posted this image on her Instagram, "Step into the daylight and let go." It's seen by many as a transition between the dark rep era and the rainbow pastel lover era. This is important for a bunch of reasons. The daylight/step into the daylight metaphor is widely believed by Gaylors to refer to Taylor officially coming out as queer. You're in the shadows in the closet. Once you come out of the closet, you're in the daylight. Dates are also very important to Taylor. March 6th is widely believed by Gaylors to be an important anniversary, and I don't mean the one that includes Calvin Harris. Taylor would end up doing a bunch of Instagram photos, many of which were rainbow or bi pride or lesbian hues. There were a ton of butterflies as well, and the snake into butterfly imagery that joins Rep and Lover. Sophie TV pointed out that there's species of butterflies that when they're in the chrysalid phase of their transformation into a butterfly can look like a snake if they feel unsafe or attacked in order to protect themselves. Then, after the average 13 days waiting period, they transform into a beautiful butterfly. Basically, what Taylor was doing was protecting herself during reputation with that persona like she described. And now she was ready to finally transform and have a new beginning. Here's a description of what butterflies mean. A powerful beacon of growth and new beginnings, the butterfly signifies the power of transformation and the incredible feats we can achieve when we trust ourselves. We all have the ability to listen to our innate wisdom, guide ourselves through difficult times, and emerge better and stronger than before. In April, Christian Siriano teased that he was working on a dress that Taylor was going to wear. Keep that fact in the corner of your mind while we continue. We'll come back to this. So I previously said June 30th and the Pride Parade is when most of us believe that 2019 was supposed to happen to simplify things. There's also some evidence that suggests she planned to come out on April 25th, 2019 as well. She was scheduled to be with Robin Roberts at the NFL Draft for a big announcement that she was going to give, and she was wearing a rainbow dress. Robin mentions that Taylor was crying in the green room in advance of it, which Taylor acknowledges. And especially as someone who has seen a lot of Taylor's interviews, Taylor absolutely seems out of sorts in this interview. Her reactions don't feel quite right for just somebody who is releasing information about their new song and album. You also get the feeling Robin is expecting more, and the announcement of the song and music video is not exactly what she thought was going to transpire. It's also worth noting that Robin Roberts is openly gay. I could see Taylor wanting to come out to someone else who gets it. As for why Taylor might have decided not to go through with it, it's important to remember that the Masters heist gets framed as a single event occurring June 30th, 2019, but it's actually something that had quietly been progressing since mid-2018. The long story short is that Taylor initially tried to get her masters back via signing a new contract with Big Machine, but they couldn't agree on terms because Big Machine was unreasonable, in my opinion at least. So Taylor signed with UMG and left her masters behind. It's entirely possible that she found out that they were going to sell her masters or that they were shopping them around or something, which caused Taylor to not want to go through with things. Especially if the June 30th sale was deliberately timed to prevent Taylor from coming out, it's absolutely possible that something was communicated to her in April as well that thwarted that plan too. And a lot of us believe that Taylor was going to do more than just come out. A lot of us believe that she was going to expose the industry for the way they harm queer artists, especially young queer artists. If that is the case, there is absolutely a reason for Big Machine to want her to stay quiet, if part of talking her truth was explaining how they controlled and restricted her expression of her own identity. Regardless, she announced Me. Me was released on April 26th. April 26th in 2019 was Lesbian Visibility Day, and she captioned the release with Me, out now. This is one of the reasons a lot of people expected that interview would be a coming out, right? The caption makes a lot more sense in that context, but also I personally think the caption alone counts as a coming out, and that's not an unpopular sentiment either. But let's talk about Me some more. The music video for Me was full of rainbows everywhere, and something Sophie TV and honestly many other Gaylors have pointed out is that when Lil Nas X came out of the closet, he posted screenshots of a rainbow-hued building from one of his music videos with the text, "Deadass thought I made it obvious." Taylor also probably deadass thought that she had made it obvious. And while we didn't know this then, when Miss Americana came out, we would get a glimpse at the behind the scenes of the Me music video filming, where Taylor says, "My idea that I had in the beginning is like, it starts in an apartment, like you and me, we get into a big fight. I storm out and then all of a sudden I have like a parade happening. And whatever makes you, you know, just like emo kids, theater bros, dancing, La La Land, everything." Brendan interjects, "Nailed it." And when it's me, it's like dancers, cats, gay pride, people in country western boots, everything that makes me me. Taylor listed gay pride as something that makes her her. That is just not something an ally would say. As Sydney from TikTok has said, it's like somebody who is not black saying that black pride makes me me. And like, even in the unlikely chance that she said it as an ally, she said it to another queer person, and then it presumably went past a number of other queer people in the process of making and releasing Miss Americana. If she was not part of the community, someone would have said something at some point, and that scene would have been cut. But also, if she was in the closet and wanted to remain in the closet and didn't want anyone to think she was queer, she would have just cut that scene, or at least the moment where she says gay pride. But back to late April and what we knew then. Taylor does a number of live performances of Me, featuring a lot of rainbow colors and lesbian flag colors. Taylor Nation is doing a lot of rainbow posts. They're acknowledging a lot of the fans that are using rainbow emojis, etc. Then on June 1st, Taylor makes a large donation to GLAAD. She also appears at Wango Tango in the gayest outfit of all time, an outfit that was clearly so important to Taylor that she had a drag queen wear it for a later performance of You Need to Come Down live, and a background dancer wear it during the Glass Closet segment of the Eras tour. And remember I was talking about Christian Siriano making a dress for Taylor? Well, in June he started hyping up this rainbow dress he was making for someone. Rumors quickly began to spread that this was the dress Taylor was going to wear. We'll come back to it again soon, just keep it on your mind a little bit longer. Then came You Need to Calm Down in mid-June. A couple of very critical points about You Need to Calm Down are that, regardless of how you choose to interpret the song, it is confirmed by Taylor to be about the LGBTQ community. It literally says, "Shade never made anybody less gay." I am fond on this channel about talking about how Taylor has not confirmed about what most of her songs are about in the past years. This is one of the few that she has made it very, very inarguably clear what this song is about. And furthermore, when she needs to cut down part of the song for time, such as when she's performing for award shows, she chooses to omit the first of the call-out lines, "Snakes and stones never broke my bones," and instead ensure that the song is always performed with the "Shade never made anybody less gay" line. It is clear that line is critically important to her. And this phrase is a classic Taylor Swift double meaning, shade as in the kind that's thrown, but also shade as in hidden from the light. There is no daylight in the closet, so while Taylor is still closeted, she is in the shade. Her being in the closet didn't and doesn't make her any less gay. And she confirms this interpretation with the song Paris. When I say Taylor likes giving us a metaphor on one album and then recontextualizing it and giving us more insight to it with another album, this is a really good example. Sit quiet by my side in the shade, and not the kind that's thrown. I mean, the kind under where a tree has grown. Taylor expresses that when she speaks of shade, she speaks of concealment more than scorn or throwing shade in the modern-day social media scrutiny sense. Taylor also uses the pronouns in this song to make sure we realize that she is including herself as a part of the community. Pronouns matter so much in Taylor's work because she tells so much with so little. In You Need to Calm Down, she alternates the pronoun on the line, "Don't step on blank gown." The usual order is, "Don't step on my gown," "Don't step on his gown," "Don't step on our gowns." So in the song that is explicitly about queerness, Taylor uses pronouns in two places to confirm that she is part of that community. If people read the lyrics like she has always screamed at us to do, they would have recognized her as out by that point. And then there's the music video. I mentioned the color yellow earlier and how in the queer community it's associated with closeting. We see Taylor surrounded by this closeting yellow here. It's literally the inner tube keeping her afloat. She's also wearing a wig or has temp dyed her hair the bi flag colors. There's some debate over it's a wig or her hair, but not the point for right now. But the entire point of the You Need to Calm Down music video is that there's a big gay trailer park in which Taylor resides and is the sheriff. And we see tons of out celebrities, but we also see homophobic hecklers. And Taylor visually is constantly associating herself with the queer people in the trailer park. If Taylor had done this and was an ally, we would not only not see all the queer celebrities in the music video with her, but we also wouldn't see her with the number of friends in the queer community that she still has to this day. Like, I just don't see Lucy Dacus being friends with somebody who's cosplaying as the sheriff of the big gay trailer park unless she's actually a person who is queer. Taylor would do a number of live performances of this song as well, often ensuring that everyone on stage was a member of the LGBTQ community. And during the lyric "We All Have Crowns" at her VMAs performance, Taylor stood in a row with a group of drag queens and motioned with her hand as though she was crowning herself. This is yet another visual that is linking her to the LGBTQ community, but it also stands out to me that drag queens perform femininity, and that's very much what Taylor's stage performance is too. It's just another way of performing femininity artistically. It doesn't surprise me that so many female pop stars have involved drag queens in their performance in one way or another because they have that in common. And just honestly, realistically, I don't know how Taylor wasn't wasn't considered out with everything that she had just done with me and with You Need to Calm Down. I just don't grasp why anybody needed more than that. And also, despite how much that song has gotten clowned by fans and how much fans begged to have it replaced on the Eras Tour, it had a prominent position in the show for the entire run. Anyway, on June 15th, 2019, Taylor stopped by the Stonewall Inn and did a special performance. Most of the rumors associated with Taylor potentially coming out at Pride specified that she was going to do something at the Stonewall Inn, so it's very likely they knew and know to this day that Taylor is queer. Both Stonewall and GLAAD's official accounts have sneakily included Taylor when talking about queer artists in the years since 2019, so there has long been the belief that those organizations know for sure that she's one of us. Then, June 30th happened. June 30th was the 50th anniversary of New York Pride. It was a huge event. There were rumors that went around the site that day that Taylor was going to go to Pride. She had an interview scheduled that morning, and then many people believed that she was going to don the dress that Christian Siriano had made her and go to Pride. But then she was told that Scooter Braun bought her masters. And I think one thing about this that just doesn't get brought up enough is the fact that Scooter was not just someone that she despised. He was the manager of somebody who, at minimum, was Taylor's best friend, but more realistically was very likely her girlfriend. This was not just an action taken to try and profit off of Taylor's money and to profit off of the increased interest in her music if she did come out. This was also a strategy to protect his investment in Karlie Kloss, because Scooter knew that Taylor coming out would almost definitely out Karlie as well. Which just frames all of that as being even more sinister and difficult to bear. But regardless, Scooter buys her masters. And everything starts to fade to black. All the rainbow and color and sparkle begin to disappear. It's still there for a couple of performances, which to me suggests that they were busy regrouping behind the scenes and hadn't yet come to the full conclusion that she needed to cancel her plans entirely. And I believe one of the biggest pieces of evidence supporting this is the line, "I was a functioning alcoholic till nobody noticed my new aesthetic." When I look at mainstream Swiftie theory crafting sites, it's probably one of the lines that people say they don't understand the most. But we read it as, Taylor was able to function as an alcoholic until nobody noticed her new aesthetic. Her fans didn't see that she was queer. And then, at that point, she didn't cease being an alcoholic, she ceased being able to function. It is a heartbreaking scenario to consider. We do not see Taylor in a Siriano gown, as he had hinted back in April. Billy Porter ended up wearing the dress, but you can tell it wasn't designed for him. People have noticed that there's a flesh tone modesty panel, and it's for somebody with much, much paler flesh. Christian Siriano is not that bad of a designer. Rumors about this dress have abounded for years now, and in 2022, Christian would start hinting that the rumors were true on TikTok. Someone made a video explaining the rumor, and Christian duetted it while drinking tea. He deleted it very quickly after, but he knows how Gaylors collect receipts. He's also posted photoshops of Taylor in the dress, and he sells signed prints of the dress's design from time to time for $89. He has also sold the designs for one of his Billy Porter looks, which allows us to compare the two and to see, when he designs for Billy, the figure is drawn out as a black man. The figure in the rainbow pride dress is clearly intended to be a white woman. After the master's heist and the failure of the coming out plan, the rainbow color and the sparkle faded away and was replaced by darker hues. There were still hints of it if you knew what to look for, but for the most part it was replaced. Taylor was quite obviously sad. Her voice sounded like she'd been crying at some of her live performances. And because we know Taylor makes a lot of plans in advance, if she had a huge coming out plan that she had to stop, there would be evidence of such. There would be things that are missing, gaps, things that feel like shifts, and we have those things in spades. Last minute lover changes. Again, I'm pulling a lot of this from Sophie TV's timeline. We know that Taylor made some last-minute changes to Lover. She axed All the Girls You've Loved Before and Need. All the Girls is pretty transparently a sapphic song, like it doesn't need a Gaylor to make that connection. We also know that Taylor made London Boy last minute. London Boy being the song from Lover that's the most OMG, I love my boyfriend. And it's interesting to me that she did so in a way that really communicated to the fans that it was a last-minute addition. She decided to sample Cold War by Cautious Clay, and her team called his in the middle of the night. It was a last-minute thing that happened at the end of June 2019. And because he was comparatively a small artist and someone very honored by Taylor including him, he spoke to the media directly about how he got that last-minute 2 a.m. phone call from Taylor's team and was told that he needed to get back to them within 24 hours. If the album was always anticipated to be about Joe from the very beginning, why was this song added at the last possible minute? And the choice of Cold War was certainly an interesting one. Cold War had been used in a movie called Booksmart that Taylor promoted, so we know that she knows about it, and it played during a lesbian sex scene, so it seems like even with this song, she was still trying to signal her truth to observant fans in the know. And then there's all the changes that happened with the Miss Americana documentary. many of us believe that Miss Americana was supposed to be, among other things, a coming out documentary. We know that it was originally supposed to be about one topic and that it was supposed to be called Is It Cool That I Said All That? But once the topic changed, so too did the name. We know that the director has said a lot of footage was thrown out. Something she also says is interesting is that she didn't even meet Joe Alwyn until the very end of production, which she has also talked about how much time she spent with Taylor, like a year and a half to 2 years, and being there during a bunch of critically important moments in her life. And like, why wasn't he there? Like, this should have been the height of their relationship. The documentary itself feels rushed at parts and disjointed at parts. It feels like it was meant to build up to one conclusion and then builds up to another. And it's not just Gaylors who think that. The last paragraph of Time's review is especially interesting. Are these calculated disclosures? The long list of glaring omissions, as well as Wilson's reticence to investigate how this political awakening has affected her daily life offstage and outside the boardroom, make it hard to argue otherwise. Yet they do come across as genuine. With a more elegant, purposeful structure, or at least more time to explore her toughest choices, Miss Americana might have given fans a satisfying portrait of the real Taylor Swift. As is, it's more like a sketch, and that's a shame. After an album as bright and vivid as Lover, I can't imagine I was the only one hoping for more color. Especially that last line about hoping for more color with rainbows and their association with the queer community, it suggests that Gaylors might not have been the only ones that were expecting something a little different from the film. And I think a lot of people absolutely got the queer person coming out vibe from Miss Americana, which is why so many people nowadays dismiss it by saying it's her coming out as a Democrat film. But let's talk about the music itself. Taylor's music afterwards. I could probably do an hour-plus long video just on songs that could be interpreted as related to the failed coming out alone, but I'm just going to briefly go over a couple. In the recorded version of Archer, Taylor sings "Combat, I'm ready for combat," singular. Ever since then, she's sung it as "Combats, I'm ready for combats," with many Gaylors believing that the first combat was the first failed coming out, and the pluralization since is done to acknowledge her second failed coming out in the Lover era. Hoax. You know the hero died, so what's the movie for? Many Gaylors see the hero as the version of Taylor who would have come out, and the anti-hero as the version of Taylor who chose her career and her life's work over living authentically as herself with a lover. Thus, this line being about the Miss Americana film and essentially saying, if I didn't go through with coming out, what even is the point of doing the film at all? I mentioned the anti-hero too. Both the song and the music video can be interpreted as related to failed coming out as well. Many Gaylors view the blurple glitter that she bleeds after being shot by the Archer as her inner queerness. She conceals this with a political badge, like she concealed the original gay plot of Miss Americana by coming out as a Democrat instead. And realistically, a lot of her songs since Lover have contained elements of feeling like people didn't listen to the message she was sending, feeling like she's trapped in a cage of her own creation, feeling like she sacrificed her lover for her career, lamenting her own cowardice, etc. Queerbaiting allegations. And to add insult to injury, because Taylor could not fully go through with her coming out, most people misinterpreted all of this as her queerbaiting her fans. I think a lot of fans either don't remember that time or weren't as big of fans then, or they were much younger, and they didn't see or don't remember how many publications and fans themselves were accusing her this era of being a queerbaiter. And like, realistically, when I put myself in Taylor's shoes, I see it looking a little like this. I'm Taylor Swift. I have the power to be and do almost anything except be myself. I have spent years trying to work to the point where I can come out and authentically be myself and also own my own work, but one of my worst enemies ruined that moment right before it was supposed to happen. And then, to add insult to injury, people didn't see the message I was trying to send and instead twisted it into the most cynical and hurtful possible interpretation. It doesn't shock me at all that Taylor's been far more tight-lipped about herself and her beliefs since this era, given so much that should have been accepted and given light to our understanding of Taylor actually was twisted and used as a weapon against her. And a lot of people ask, well, how do we know that 2019 failed coming out wasn't just an attempt at queerbaiting? Like, first off, because the queer themes and imagery in her work have been inherent since day one. Like, for example, the song she wrote in 2004 with Shelley Wright, as in the Shelley Wright who has publicly spoken out about how damaging being in the closet was for her, all the way up to Every Night of the Eras tour, where she did a lesbian leap into the stage before climbing the ladder to her lavender haze every night. with a lesbian leap, and the latter being two prominent lesbian magazines from years past, and lavender being a color heavily associated with the queer community, but especially with women-loving women. And beyond the constant queer signs throughout her entire corpus, once you realize the pattern that failed coming out 2 followed, it's easy to see what was likely the first iteration of this pattern, occurring from the lead up to 1989 until the Kimye call and Taylor's reputation being destroyed. But that'll be the topic of part 2 of this video, which will be coming in a week. I'm sorry, I wanted to get this out soonish given that Taylor owns her masters again, but the more I wrote about the 2014 to 2016 period of Taylor's career, the more thoughts I had, and I didn't want this to be a 90-minute long video, and I also want a little bit more time to research that. So if you've liked this video so far and want to hear about the other failed coming out, please give me a subscription and hit the bell so you can be notified when I do post that video. I want to say that it's going to be exactly 7 days from this video being posted, but I understand that sometimes I don't meet deadlines, so it's best to just subscribe and let the bell do it for you.